How and why did you decide to write an anti-Islamic book? How was your life in regards to faith? What did you believe in? What was your heaviest and most regretful expression that you used for Islam? What was the reaction of the people around you when you became Muslim? I thought to myself, Islam is a lie. Islam is a danger. I got over 2,000 death threats, and in the end, I decided to write an anti-Islam book. God give me a sign so that I will 100% sure know this is the way. I couldn't sleep for it for 2 days. I couldn't accept it. It was so strange. Assalamu alaikum, brother Joram Van Klaveren. Thank you for accepting our invitation, and we are happy to have you with us. I want to first ask you, who is Joram? Wa alaikum assalam Ahmed. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor for me to be here. Joram Van Klaveren was born on January 23, 1979 in Amsterdam, in a pretty regular family. Father, mother, brother, another brother, younger, a sister, a cat. In Amsterdam, I was born and raised there in a practicing Protestant family. After I finished high school, I studied comparative religion. I was a teacher for a few years. There happened a lot of things in the Netherlands, especially in my life. Also, when I look at the bigger picture when it came to Islam, I became politically active for the Freedom Party. I became a member of parliament. And in the end, I decided to write an anti-Islam book, which started as an anti-Islam book, changed into this search for God, and it ended up me becoming a Muslim. How was your life in regards to faith? What did you believe in? Before I was a Muslim, I was a Protestant Christian from the Reformed Church. We read from the Bible, we all got biblical names, we were all baptized, we went to church, etc. So we were pretty Christian in that way, in that sense. Of course, I believe that there is a creator. I believe in heaven, hell. I believe in angels, revelations. And of course, what separates the Christians from the Muslims is that I believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. In a more philosophical way, I believe he was God himself, of course. I believe in the resurrection and crucifixion of Christ, of course, and I believe in the atonement. But because the Trinity is a very complex concept, whether you believe it or not, it's still very complex because if there is a God in the Bible, it says God is eternal. But if you are eternal and in the same, you die. You cannot be eternal and mortal at the same time. So it was something when I was a little older, 16, 17, I started questioning things like that. It's not very logical. I talked to many priests, preachers, even rabbis, and the answers I got weren't very satisfying. That made it for me kind of complex. And in the end, I had some doubts about this stuff like this. I set aside and I thought, okay, I just believe it. Perhaps I'm not smart enough to get the whole picture. And I still believed in God. I still believed that Jesus was a very important person. I believe he was the Son of God. But how it exactly was, I left it for what it was. How and why did you decide to write an anti-Islamic book? After high school, I went to a university. I did comparative religion. The remarkable thing, I think, was that the first day of me going to college was September 11, 2001. I already thought, okay, these Muslim guys are kind of crazy, and this religion isn't the truth. Then a few years later was this guy in the Netherlands called Theo van Gogh. He was a famous filmmaker, and he was killed in the street. He was shot, and they tried to slit his throat, and they put a knife in his stomach with a letter on it for another girl, Ayaan Hish Ali, and it said, "You are next." So it strengthened my anti-Islam feelings in such a way that I felt, I have to become politically active to do something and stop this evil of harming our country. You started politics because of Islam. Yeah, that really had to do with Islam. That was the reason I wanted to write a book to explain to people why Islam was a danger for the world. When I was writing my book, like I said earlier, the questions, the doubts I had about Christianity popped up again, and that was about truth, of course, because I was a believing Christian guy. And yeah, the Christian questions I had, in the end, were answered in an Islamic way. Because of course, when I started writing the book, a lot of people think that it was a political book, but it wasn't so much a political book, it was a religious book. Because I wanted to show people why Islam was a danger as a religion, and I wrote it from a Christian perspective. So in the beginning, I made a comparison between the Christian concept of God and the Islamic concept, so I started comparing it. But because I had these doubts about the Trinity, and I saw Tawheed, the oneness of God in Islam, I thought, yeah, it sounds a little bit more logical. And then I thought to myself, well, I reread the Bible to refresh myself, to see, okay, why isn't the concept of Islam, the Tawheed concept, isn't the Christian concept? When I was reading the Old Testament, I saw what the Old Testament prophet said. It was one God, one God, one God. And then I thought, okay, I'll look only at the words of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. And then there's this story in the New Testament where a guy comes to Jesus and he asks him, what is the most important thing in life? How can I gain paradise? And he says, there are two things. He says, hear, O Israel, hear your God is one. Treat your neighbor as you want to be treated yourself. So I thought, well, even Jesus Christ says, hear, O Israel, your God is one. So I thought, well, this whole Muslim concept of God sounds more logical. It's the same concept that I find in the Old and the New Testament. I know Christianity as a religion teaches something else, but it isn't the concept of God that I find in the Bible. So after weeks and weeks of study, reading, rereading all kinds of books, I thought to myself, okay, perhaps this oneness of God is something that is true. So that's how it started. What resources did you use while doing your research? Because I was kind of shocked. I started writing to several authorities on these religious matters. And one of the guys that I wrote to was Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad. He's a professor from Cambridge University. But in a way, it was kind of strange, of course, because I was a politician back then still. I was writing an anti-Islam book with an anti-Islam purpose, and I'm asking this Muslim professor from another country, can you help me? So I told him, I'm writing a book. I have a lot of questions, so I was very plain why I thought, why is Islam promoting terrorism? Why is he anti-woman? Why is he anti-Christian? Anti-whatever. After, I think, 6 weeks, he sent me a very extensive email and he started explaining, directly answered a lot of my questions, but he also told me, you have to read this article, read this book, read that book, ask this person. So he was very extensive in his way of explaining. But in the end, after I read all these books and articles and made a comparison between prophets from the Old Testament with Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, I had no arguments anymore to say they are prophets, and he is not. I thought to myself, well, if I accept Moses on these grounds and I cannot accept the prophet, then there is something else. So I said, why don't I think he is a prophet? And I thought perhaps because he had many wives, but then again, when you look at Solomon, when you look at King David, Abraham, there are a lot of people in the Old Testament that had more wives. And when you look at even outside of the religious books, culturally, Europe, in Africa, Asia, everywhere, there were men with several wives for several reasons. So I thought to myself, well, there cannot be a reason either. So one by one, all these reasons fell. And in the end, I thought, well, I have to say all of them are not prophets. But I didn't believe that because I thought, well, the things they did, they said, the miracles that happened, etc. They were confirmed in what they said and what they did, so they are. Then I said, well, then I have to accept that Prophet Muhammad perhaps is a prophet too. So I was doubting it. So first I thought, well, it's the most evil person I know because of the history. I said, well, perhaps it's not that evil, but he's not a prophet. And in the end, I started doubting perhaps he is a prophet. Yeah, that took, of course, me reading a lot of books again. And the one thing that I think was very wise of Abdul Hakim Murad to say was, he said, well, the books you read about with the anti-Islam arguments are written by non-Muslims. He said, if you want to know more about Christianity, you don't read books from atheists. You start reading the books from the Christians. Why do they believe this? What are the arguments? So he said, you have to do the same with Islam. So start reading Islamic books from Islamic teachers, from Islamic scholars, etc. And then you can see, if you compare the books on the same topic of people who are Muslim and wrote those books, and non-Muslims, you can see where they took the wrong turn, where they translated words in the wrong way, sometimes perhaps even not on purpose, but just because they didn't know where things are added, where things left out of it. So, and in the end, you see there is this other religion almost created because of all these things. That's what I did. And that's what I also did with the life of the Prophet, because I read a book from Martin Link's, The Life of but I cannot say that this is not a good man. So his character persuaded me to read more, to want to know more. What surprised you the most while doing your research? The story about Hein. There was something that, like a switch, like I had to change. And it was because I thought Hind, who was the wife of one of the enemies, Abu Sufyan, and in a way he gave money to kill Hamza, the favorite uncle of the Prophet. And that was what happened on the battlefield. He got killed. They even paraded with his ears and cut off his nose and horrible stuff. So the Prophet was deeply sad, of course, of what happened. And years later, he became powerful. He came in power in Mecca. And then there was Hind. And I was reading this book and I thought, okay, now she gets crucified, or her head gets cut off, or something like that. And he said, well, I cannot look at her right now, but everybody is forgiven. And if you want to stay here and live among the Muslims, it's possible. If you don't want that, you can go. The bloodshedding is over now. I thought to myself that she was forgiven. If you can forgive someone who kills a relative, especially a favorite uncle, if you even start parading with parts of his body to show other people that she humiliates you and whatever you stand for, that means you have such a great character. It's very special. It's something you don't see. And that's what he did. So I thought to myself, well, it was a really special guy. And when I thought that, I thought, well, I have these arguments for him being a prophet. I see his character. I see the way he treated other people. I see how he treated his enemies. I think he is a prophet. Then I thought to myself, whoa, that's horrible. Because I already accepted this oneness of God. And now I say he is a prophet.